Hey, welcome back to Papa's Custom Cars. We're back on the firewall again this week. So, without any further ado, we've made some changes. Let's go into those changes that we've made. So, there's a few things that we've decided we're going to do since we've gotten this taken down. Once we pulled all of the garbage off of, or the seam sealer and all that fun stuff off, we've gone ahead and put some weld-through primer on here and some self-etching down on the frame horns. Both you can find them in on my YouTube page, my main page. There's links to my Amazon store. Everything that I've used in this build, for the most part, is on there. I do need to add the intake manifold and heads and all that kind of fun stuff. But all the pads and all the paint and all the grinding and all the fun stuff are all on that site. But where we're at with this is I did go ahead and shoot some weld through primer off screen. And I also put some self-etching on there because it started to flash rust on me. There isn't a lot of moisture here in Utah normally, but we've had little bit of rain come through, and because of that, it's putting a little bit more moisture in the air. And we're running the air conditioner here in the garage, so that creates a little bit of moisture. So the rust wasn't bad. It was just a matter of scuffing it off and then just shooting what I've already cleaned. We've made a couple of decisions, or I should say I've made a couple of decisions. I've had a while to think on it and then stare at it every day I take the dogs out. So we are going to put in one full panel across this whole entire area. We are going to stamp the VIN numbers into that new panel in the exact locations they are here, and that way we're compliant. And the VINs are still showing, especially this one on the cow panel. It's important that one is there. We will have full video, as your guys are looking at it right now, of these VIN numbers. That way they can see, yes, this is in fact the same car, and this is in fact that VIN, because that's how people steal cars. We are going to, like I say, full panel this, and then get everything, as we go through, get everything cleaned up so that we can shoot the blue on this. We're also going to have to clean up this top area so that once we shoot all of this, we can shoot the whole cowl, because this can be seen underneath the cowl panel. There is a lot of sealer in this entire area. This is what started the project off to begin with 10 years ago, was rust forming on the top of this fender. And if you go back and look at the pictures, maybe I'll do a montage or something later on in life showing everybody what I ran into and the degree that it was. But there's some tips in there for you guys that own Novas. Pull the fenders off. There's some holes you can drill that'll stop it from ever happening, if it hasn't already happened. This particular fender and that fender were rusting themselves from the inside out. The bracing that you see on the fiberglass fender here, the steel bracing, actually had pockets in it where water, if it came down through the seams, could sit. One was sitting right here at the very top, a big old pocket, and water could come in and just sit in there and just start eating away at the fender. And that's what started all of it, is it started eating the fender from the bottom up. That, and the fact that when he initially somebody did this repair, or he did the repair, I think the guy did the repair, he stuffed a bunch of plastic bags down in here, and all these plastic bags are down in this fender area, and that's what caused moisture to form and the fenders to rust from the inside out. But as I say, in those videos that I've got of doing this fiberglass work, you'll see where to drill holes in your, pull the fender off. There are a few areas on this brace that you can drill holes and never have to worry about water pooling anywhere. There's one up here at the top. It's a cup, and you'll see it when you pull the fender off. Drill a hole in it, and you won't have to worry about it. If this water's got places to drain, it won't hang out inside your fender. So that's one of the suggestions. I've got to clean up. There's just gobs of seam sealer in here. It's unbelievable how much they did. So that's what we're going to do here. Is we're going to go ahead, we're going to cut these, fold this all flat. I haven't decided if I'm going to cut the panel out and put in a new panel, or if I'm just going to go over the top of it. Probably just go over the top of it, dent in this area, because this cowl is all one piece and it continues underneath. So this basically just welds to it. So it would be easy to replace this portion of it, but then you're getting into a lot of changes down in here. So if we just skin the whole thing, I think we'll be okay. And then we'll just have to form the top along this seam, and then down there towards the middle of the body. We are going to paint this all blue down to about halfway, down to about where the frame horns hit. This will all be blue, and then the subframe is going to be black. A couple of things that I figured out about the subframe is this car has been hit, and it was hit pretty significantly because, as I was mentioning in the earlier videos, there's welding here that doesn't look right. It's definitely not factory welding, especially when you look at the other frame horn. This subframe has been hit, and hit probably relatively hard. The damage seems to come back to here, and that's it. So the only thing I can figure is this frame horn got hit. They put it on a frame machine and pulled this out, because I think that's where the rip came from on this horn, on the bumper bracket. The bumper bracket sits about right here, and then the bumpers bolt to it. Well, if there's a hard impact, this whole thing is going to shove back, and that would explain why there's a weld along this whole entire area here. There's a weld in here, and there's a weld along here, and then down on the bottom along here. The welds on the other side appear to be factory. So whoever did this they evidently cut or whatever they did to repair it. But if you look at the opening of this horn versus the opening of the other one, this one's just a tiny bit narrower. There's more curve to this piece of metal than there is on the other side. So we will clean this all up. Back then they used stick welders. We all know about them. Not so many MIG welders out there. They were high dollar, but a lot of this is stick welded, and that's why there's big gobs, and it's just not a good look. You can't see this when the cowl's on, because the cowl sits right on this bolt hole here, and it covers this whole entire thing. So you wouldn't notice it anyway, but it has been hit, just not real hard. Judging from, I measured everything out, and everything seems to be okay. This I got put in etching primer, also on my website. It's just plain old Rust-Oleum automotive self-etching primer, mainly because that is down to the bare metal. And the etching primer helps your primer and everything else stick to that metal. Otherwise, it could flake or something. Like if you look at a lot of the cars where you see paint flaking and everything, they didn't prep it; they just shot it and sent it down the line. Whereas if you put a good primer on it and then paint it, it'll give you a nice color. I'm cleaning it up before I do everything. I do have tubular control arms, as I've said. I do need to buy drop spindles, and I do need to buy the coilover shocks. Hopefully my next bonus, that'll be what I buy. Just like you guys, I buy things as I go. Prime example is that engine. 10 years, I think it took me to get all the parts together. I've had parts for it over 20 years, let's put it that way. You got family and life, then this isn't your priority. Whatever's going on out there is your priority. So with that, I do have the sheet steel for this, so we'll start working on this today, and bending this all back over, getting it all prepped. And then once I've got the bonus check here in the next couple of weeks, we'll be ordering all the parts to do the control arms. And we'll basically do one half at a time. Today we're going to work on this, focusing completely on this, and that's about it. And that's probably going to be the next group of videos, is just going through this process. I'm going to try to keep it down to 20 minutes a piece, because anything more than that, and it gets really complex. Leave me a note in the comments if you're interested in something specific, but there are a few things you got to pay attention to when you do this. I do have a new bulkhead fitting that will go right here where this opening is, and there's the heater and the air conditioning hose, and they'll be tucked somehow up in the fender. I'll create a channel for them to go in along with any wiring, because there's not going to be any more fender wells in here. But I'll have a bulkhead fitting here, and then I've got to continue to keep this bolt hole here. This is a fender bolt. These two here are what your fender bolts to on the firewall, and then you've got one bolt back here, and then the ones on the bottom, of course, and then of course up on the radiator support. So that hole has to stay, and like I said, I'm going to stamp the VINs in the new one. I'm going to video this real well, take pictures of it and everything. That way, if it's ever comes into question, I can say, this is what we did, and there they are. And I will probably leave this section in here. Well, this will be here, and then when I weld everything in, if worst comes to worst, I'll be able to cut a piece out and show that VIN. I don't think it'll ever come to that. As long as I've got good video backup on everything, we should be okay. But that's kind of where we're concentrating. We've got to keep that whole, and then we'll probably run the panel over to about center point here. But yeah, I mean, if you ever get, I'll try to zoom you in so you can see the craftsmanship here. Back in the day on these cars, you can tell this is not a handmade car. It went through the line. You can also tell this is a lower level car. This was one step up from a Vega. So you either got a Vega or you stepped up and you got this one. Personally, I've had them both, and both were fun. But that's kind of where we're at with it. But yeah, I think we're just going to go ahead and cardboard all this up and get it all put together. That way we're ready to go. For the cardboard, I use these small squares. I don't use big pieces because it's easier to work a section at a time. And then once I've got my basic outline, I'll tape them together and then, work on the next part and so on and so forth. It just makes it a lot easier to handle a smaller piece than it is a large piece. And you'll get a more precise fit when you do it. Same way as I've got the trunk. I've already got these made for the trunk, so all I have to do in there is cut it out of steel and build them. But this was going to take precedence. I've got a lot of work I need to do paint-wise, which includes the front and everything, but I need to get that engine in here, but I can't get that engine in here until this is done. Once this is done, we can get that engine in and we can start on the frame itself. But we do need to get underneath the engine and everything painted. So, like I say, we're going to have to get the front ends put together, all this cleaned up, and all this ready to go. So that's what we're working on today. Hopefully, we can get through it pretty quickly. Like I said, I'm going to do a bunch of short videos on this. And if you have any specific questions on what, where, how, when, how, do me a favor, put it in the comments. Do me a favor, give me a thumbs up on my videos. It definitely helps my channel out a lot. And then if you're interested in any specific item or product that I've used in this build, you can definitely shoot me a note, and I can let you know how well it works. This is the first time I'm using this weld-through primer, so far so good. I've used it on a couple of things and don't seem to have any trouble with it. But this good old-fashioned Rust-Oleum self-etching I've used since the beginning of this whole project. It's actually on some parts of the car where we went down to bare metal. So let's get to it. Let's get this thing all hammered out and get it done. But yeah, the problem with cutting it is this goes down, way down into this part. I don't feel a seam anywhere through here. So this is all one piece all the way up. Probably take a body saw and or cutting wheel and just cut the lip out, which we may end up doing because all it's really wanting to do is distort the metal here. It's moving the metal, but it's not moving it the way I'd like it to move. So we may just end up just cutting this out and calling it a day, because there's no point in messing with all this. Like I said, we'll cut on the inside here. We will flatten this or just kind of curve it a little bit so that the VIN stays. But yeah, we're going to have to end up cutting this out. So let's go get a body saw and let's go to town on this thing. Then we had a bit of a battery failure there, so hopefully we cut a lot of this, but we basically cut our piece out of our cardboard. Um, this does curve up as the cardboard across, and the panel also curves with it. So I'll be following the lip of the panel and see, and then down here will be just under the body, and this is our brace down here at the bottom. So we'll have some really good areas to weld to. Down here, I'm probably going to have to trim a little bit, but for the most part, this is our layout. I put an arrow here too because there's a gradual uprise to this edge and this down a little bit. So I'm going to make sure that I capture all of it. And that way when I fine tune this piece of metal, I've got it all covered. So with that, I'm going to call it. It is hot today. We had the garage door open. We had to do the transition and then the start leaking again. We think it's still low in that transition, and that what may have been what probably doing with that thing, but that's for another day in the sun. We're not really myself. But this is kind of our our CAD piece. We pull this off, and it's metal next week, and we'll start building this out of metal and go on the ride. So with that, if you'd like to subscribe, if you have any comments, questions, if you've done this kind of thing before, what you've run into, definitely. We've got pretty much everything on the other side of this gutted. there's nothing on the other side. And there, like I said, there'll be a bulkhead fitting in this area, hiding behind the fender, and that's so our air conditioner will actually run. The hoses will run through up in this area if we figure out a way to go out. But the main thing is the turbo pump coming and exhaust coming first. I haven't had heat in this car for years. Not that I've ever needed it because it usually doesn't go out in the winter. But if I ever need to do it, it'd be nice to have an air conditioning jacket to do that. But with that, like, share, subscribe, leave comments, give me a thumbs up, and I will see you next week.